94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
Thank you to the Columbia Fireflies and all of our friends at Segra Communications for providing tickets for this week's featured soldier. I'm your host, United States Marine Corps veteran Ethan Stitch Gardner, and on today's Soldier Salute, I have United States Marine Corps veteran, recipient of the Purple Heart, and co-founder of the American Infidels Veterans Motorcycle Club, James Shrapnel Crosby. James, thanks so much for being here with me today. You're the co-founder of the club that I hold so dear to my heart. It's an absolute honor to have you here with me today. Shrap, you joined the United States Marine Corps in 2002. You went off to war in 2004. You came back with a Purple Heart.
Thanks for having me on the show. My time in Iraq was very short. It was just there for a little over a month. I deployed in February of 2004, and on March 18, 2004, we were hit by 122 millimeter rockets, killing Corporal Brownsfield and wounding myself and two others.
So you got hit by rockets, you got injured, lost some friends. What was that like coming home after something so traumatic?
That's a question I think that's going to be asked to a lot of different veterans, and it really depends at what point in the war were you injured and how did they, get you home. And the immediate quick reaction is, let's try to save the life and preserve this life so that it makes it home. It's medevac to, Bethesda Naval Hospital, wherever you were going to be going. My time from the medical tent in the dirt that they thought that I was going to be able to make it in Iraq shortly after getting blown up, till regaining consciousness and seeing, tan Navy uniforms and knowing that even though I could hear, the sound of war around me, that I wasn't actually still there. So it's a time of transition. I was intubated, had breathing tube breathing for me. I'm looking around, seeing things that shouldn't be there. I'm seeing the landscape of Iraq, but I'm seeing, my ex-wife or, my father or my mother bringing me Dunkin' Donuts in the middle of the desert. This doesn't happen, right? So these are the effects of morphine. So then when you finally get to the point where you could get the breathing tube out of your throat, you realize what's going on and the severity of the situation, my only choice was to continue to move forward and figure out how we were going to do that.
Shrap, for your injury, you spent a lot of time in the ICU. You had options on where life was going to take you after that. What were the options and what did you decide?
So I was in a state of half consciousness and hallucination while I was still intubated, and at this point, as they could see that I was conscious and looking at them, had eye contact, and was able to make decisions, they thought it would be a good idea to make me make decisions and start signing papers when I really didn't know what was going on. My time in the ICU was 3 days, and a lot of it was surgeries and then resting and just being there beside your family that's crushed because of what happened, and pretending to sleep just so that they'll sleep because they haven't slept for days, and you don't have control. You've lost control of a situation, so you're trying to maintain the control of what you have. So I could, in that time, even though I couldn't breathe for myself, I had the choice to ease the pain for the people that were there for me just by closing my eyes and pretending I was sleeping so that my family could rest.
That had to be a really hard thing for you to do. What was the next phase? What was the next step after that particular situation?
So you're in a situation, right? And it's tough. What are we doing? We're evaluating the situation. We're figuring out how we're going to move forward. So I get the tubes out of my throat finally. I can talk somewhat. They've stopped most of the bleeding. I'm not that bad. ICU considering not that bad. So what do? You get moved to the MICU, which is just another floor where they take patients from the ICU that are recovering. So they're making me stable and preparing me for a flight out of there. I had two options. Being stationed previously at Miramar in San Diego, my family wanted me to go to Balboa Medical Facility because they're like, oh, there's a Navy hospital and this and that, and that's where you're stationed, you have your apartments there and all this stuff. And the other option was West Roxbury VA Medical Facility, Boston, and that's where I'm from. And I realized that I was more messed up than my family did. I was like, no, it's time to come home. I want to go home. I'm going back to Boston.
Shrap, you coming home to Boston, rehab goes well, you get out, you start living your life.
I got injured when I was 19 years old, so we're talking about a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, and now I'm in charge of everything, right? What happened for me, within 1 year since being blown up in Iraq, I lost my father and his mother, and it was just time to say, hey, I'm out of here. So what do? You do like a lot of people that come home from deployment, you got money in the bank, and you go out and you just be awesome. At least you think you're being awesome, right? You're in your 20s and you're drinking like a fish. Somehow you shouldn't have survived, but you did. And then your friends are partying with you and everything's going on and you're having a great time. But then they start running out of money. They can't party anymore. And you're like, no, it's all right, I got you. And that's like the first glimpse into, hey, something's wrong. Like, I'm continuing down this path. Where is that path going to lead?
Was that the time in your life where you started finding other veterans suffering through the same struggles that you were?
There you go. You hit it right on the head. I was fortunate enough to have somebody put their arm around my shoulder and say, hey, I would like you to come help me help veterans returning home from war in Massachusetts, so that they can receive the type of seamless, is a word that gets overused, but seamless transition back into civilian life. And that was former Secretary of Veterans Services for the state of Massachusetts, Captain Thomas G. Kelly, U.S. Navy Vietnam Veteran, Medal of Honor recipient.
James, you've been through a lot up to this point in your story, right? Wounded in Iraq, come home, find veterans in your local area that are suffering along with you. You work really, really hard to get this bill, the Crosby Polar Combat Wounds Compensation Act, passed. That alone, after everything that you've gone through, had to be just as difficult of an undertaking as going to war.
Honestly, it was one of the easiest things I think I had ever done, because it was a simple solution to a very complex problem. And that was eye-opening to me, and it showed me how our government works, how it should work, and how it works for us. So if we want something done, the best way to get it done is, if you have a problem, figure out what an answer or possible solution can be and take it to the people that work for us, that represent us. They work for us, and it's not the other way around.
I absolutely agree with you, and I think that a lot of Americans today feel that the government runs them more so than they have the right to stand and say, this is not what we want, this is not what's best for the people, we need to do something to change that.
I see that happening a lot. I see a lot of people that are unhappy about situations happening throughout our country, and the answer to this, it's all outlined. You know, the Founding Fathers, they put it together for us. They told us how to do it. We build communities. You find people with like-minded individuals that have similar problems, and you get together and you create a team. You build a tribe. You create a community. And you know what's going to happen in that community is people are going to find answers to problems, because you're cultivating an environment that promotes free thinking and solutions. Anybody can stand on a soapbox and cry, but not everybody can figure out how to fix the problems, but they can, right? So we need to educate everyone around us of how this really works.
Trapp, during your time in the ICU, when you were recovering from your wounds from Iraq, an incredible opportunity came your way in the form of a congressman from Massachusetts.
Congressman Ed Markey was doing his rounds in the ICU and MICU at Bethesda Naval Hospital, making sure my parents had everything that they needed before he exited. He made sure that he spoke with me and plainly said, if there's anything that I could ever do for you or your family, please don't hesitate to ask. And I said, well, sir, actually, I have a question. I said, could you explain to me why my pay was cut as soon as I left the combat zone? And he was like, excuse me, could you tell, what do you mean exactly? And I said, well, it's like this. I'm a Lance Corporal in E3 in the Marine Corps. This is 2004, so it was about $500 every 2 weeks that I get paid. Being married and with the extra pay, my paycheck doubled to $1,000 every 2 weeks. That happens as soon as you enter the combat zone. But as soon as you leave the combat zone, that extra pay gets taken away, right? No one really thought about that before. So this small question turned into an investigation from Congressman Markey's office, which then transformed into legislation, and they asked if we wanted to put our name on it. And my father, who was also a Marine, said, why don't you put Chesty Puller's name on it too? Because he never got the recognition that he deserved. So it was called the Crosby Polar Wounds Compensation Act. And what its goal was for people that were medevaced from a combat zone, their pay would not be cut, not reduced, until they either returned to active duty service, or discharged from the military, or got a payout from the Traumatic Servicemen's Group Life Insurance. This bill actually passed under the 2005 DOD Reform Act. So before my father actually passed away, we were able to see that this bill got passed, and it was pretty cool.
If you'd like to learn more about James's hard work, you can go online and research HR 5296, the Crosby Polar Combat Wounds Compensation Act. So all this stuff is coming down in your life, right? Wounded. Pass this bill. After the bill is passed, you get to go out into the community and work with veterans that are directly affected by this bill that you helped pass?
It was actually a couple years after working at the Department of Veteran Services, I started running into veterans that were telling me about this bill. Hey, did you hear about this bill that got passed? And I was like, oh yeah, what does it do?
Never heard of it.
And they're like, oh, it's called the Crosby Puller. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I heard of it. I'm like, my name's James Crosby. So that was how I started to hear about it. But then, within the same, like a few months, probably within 6 months later, I started to actually, I remember the first time somebody came up to me and said, hey, you're the guy who did that bill with Markey? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I just wanted to let you know that I directly benefited from that, and my pay was not cut when I was medevac out of a combat zone. This is like 2 years later.
James, after all this time of helping all these veterans, all these people, there's still more work to be done. What's the biggest concern that you have for the veteran community right now?
Honestly, it's that other guy that just killed me with a Car 98 on PUBG, and his handle is like Marine Vet Bro 1. I think, is this a vet that's sitting in front of his Xbox and living in his living room or his mother's basement, not getting the treatment that he needs because maybe A, he doesn't want to be a professional patient, or B, he doesn't even know what's going on and he can't fix it because it's a brain problem. Brain problems, TBIs, are one of the major, if not the most common, unseen wound many a times. They can be very drastic, obviously, but they're very common because of the IEDs that we faced over in Iraq and Afghanistan. But these are concussions. They are destroying our brain. And when you have a brain problem, it's hard to figure out what to do to fix it. Especially where you look for the answers, there are none. When you submit yourself when you make yourself vulnerable enough to get the help, the people that are supposed to help you don't have any answers. And that's my most major concern. The people that are isolating themselves, they went from, highly skilled individuals able to tackle anything they set their mind to withdraw, not working, living off the benefits, or worse, living on the street, withdrawing from society, trying to figure out why they should continue to live. What the heck why are they even going through this? Like they're lost. A brain injury completely derail your entire life. And unfortunately, the brain, just like the spine, it's a computer. It's basically, it's a lot of uncharted territory. You slam your laptop on the ground, it might have a couple bugs, right? The things might not work properly. So that's kind of like the way I relate to it. But there's new treatment out there where they're using hormone replacement therapy, not for, to reverse the signs of aging, but to take your hormones and the chemicals that your brain produces that are outside of the normal boundaries after they've run simple tests to put them back into the normal range. And for me, I actually got hit by a drunk driver, and I already had traumatic brain injury issues, short-term memory loss, irritability. It's nothing that I couldn't really get past, but when I got hit by that drunk driver, it gave me another concussion, and it made everything worse. Now I have to leave my job. I don't know what's going on, and I'm isolating, and I'm living in my living room. The saving grace is the club, surrounding myself by motivated people that are mission-driven and part of something bigger than themselves, keeping me engaged, keeping me alive, and my girl. Just witnessing everything that's going on and totally being affected by it, but just maintaining and holding down the fort while I'm losing my mind. So just to concentrate and bring some awareness, this new treatment, the Warrior Angel Foundation. So after 2 years of trying to regroup, not knowing what was wrong, but knowing something was wrong, my supportive girlfriend of over 9 years now that's watched me be such a high-functioning individual even after tremendous obstacles, right? Not know what to do. So I reached out to one of my good friends, Jimmy Mack, at 22 Kill, and said, I don't know what's going on, but I got to figure it out. Can you help? His answer was yes. And that's what started the process. I then learned about an organization that was started by an Army team guy, like a special ops guy. His name was Andrew Marr, and he started the Warrior Angel Foundation with his brother because he was in charge of breaching, right? So every time he set a charge to breach, he didn't realize he was giving himself a concussion. So after multiple missions, he realized that something was wrong. And he's like, I got to get out of here. I got to retire because I'm either going to get myself killed or one of my team members, and I can't do it, right? So he goes the normal route using what's available to us and goes to the VA. He gets the standard regimen of highly addictive and dangerous pills, right? And lives on his couch, his video games, drinks, until one day his wife says, hey, supportive wife, right? You think you could keep the drinking to a minimum just in case I go into labor today? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Not a big deal. So he's like, I'm watching my newborn daughter and my wife, and I'm saying to myself, screw this, I gotta figure it out. I gotta fix this, and I'm gonna figure it out. There's gotta be a better way. So he took his last pill Dilaudid with a gas station nip and said, let's find a way. Long story short, he found a Dr. Mark Gordon who created this treatment plan utilizing hormone replacement therapy to get our brain levels back into normal. So for me personally, right, my testosterone dropped to a 28, it's supposed to be like in the 300. I felt like I couldn't move off that couch. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything, right? It was just lost in the sauce. Your estrogen levels go up, so you're getting cranky. You can't function. Or maybe your pituitary gland is affected and your serotonin levels are all messed up. So you're crying 1 minute and you don't know why, right? And then you're good the next. So these levels are altered because your brain has been smashed against the inside of your skull. So his treatment takes your labs, identifies what's out of balance, and they put you back into the normal range, and great things start to happen. Like you can read testimonials on his page. Oh my God, this man that I met, that was a great man, but it was struggling. And since you've, started this treatment with him, he's now running 2 businesses. He's a CEO, and I don't even know who my husband is, right? Or it's a very similar story. It's the easiest way to look at healthcare, right? Let's just check the oil, change the fluids. What's out of whack? Put it back into the regular specs. Put me in the green. I think that when that happens, when you can treat somebody holistically by looking at everything, not just tell me your symptoms and I'll give you a pill that says it treats those symptoms, but what is it treating? Have you ever tried to get a diagnosis from a doctor and they give you a medicine and you're like, well, what is this going to do? You're like, well, you said you're having these problems, so take this medicine. You're like, so is this going to cure my problem? Well, no, I didn't say it was going to cure it. It's going to help treat it, hopefully. But it might not. It might kill you. Okay, thanks. I'm going to go find a better way, because this stuff is weird. Like, I'm not taking 20-something pills a day. Just to give you a simple idea of how profound, like, just natural things can be, just getting things into the norm. I used to take antibiotics every, 2 months. Because I had chronic urinary tract infections that would mutate between E. coli and MRSA. And I was living my life as if I was going to be dead in 10 years of sepsis, right? An uncurable bacterial infection. Kills people in hospitals all the time. A Vietnam veteran, Navy CB, told me about chaga mushrooms. They grow on birch trees. They look like knots. But anyways, long story short, they make tea bags out of it. I drink that tea with manuka honey in it every day. I don't take antibiotics anymore for anything. It's a tea bag.
No, it's a lot easier to take a prescription drug from the VA than it is to, go outside and pick a mushroom off of a plant.
You can go to the supermarket and get Buddha teas. They make chaga tea bags. It's that easy. But so the R&D, the research and development, isn't really there. The VA gets tasked with researching and developing projects, grant-based projects, usually funded by an institution of higher learning, right? Harvard and this and that. And then you get we got Harvard and this, all these doctors. That stuff doesn't matter. All we want is to feel normal. And if I have to drink a tea so that I don't die of sepsis, instead of taking multiple pills that don't work, take the tea. And that's another simple solution to a very complex problem, right? Keep it simple, stupid. I live by it.
Strap, there's guys listening to us talk right now that have no idea where to go from here. What do you say to that guy? What do you say to those dudes that are listening to your story right now and find themselves to be in that darkness that you were once a part of?
Honestly, I say give 22 Kill a call and tell them what's up. They'll put you in the right direction. But the biggest thing that you have to do is to not isolate yourself. Put yourself around similar people that have hopefully gone through and successfully been able to get through their demons. But if you have a brain injury, you need to check this Warrior Angel Foundation out, because Dr. Mark Gordon's training other doctors to prescribe his course of treatment. There's actually a documentary that will be coming out within the next year. But the most important thing that I could say to veterans listening to this today would be, are you living in the past? Are you living in your past service? Or are you using your past service in the present in order to ensure a happy future? Because we have to make changes not just for us. We have to improve the roads for those people, those children that are going to walk down them.
Yeah, the war that we're currently in right now, there are going to be kids that were born from service members that started that war.
Yeah, that's already happened. It's being talked about now. There was a big thing that was on the internet, father and son both fighting the same war.
And just because that war has continued to go on doesn't mean that all of us can just come home and not set up a better way, a better road for those guys coming home.
Yeah, get yourself in your community. And let's say you don't have a lot of veterans things going on in your community. Who cares? Stop isolating yourself in the veterans community. We're a veteran in our community. Get involved into your community, and guess what? You're going to find other people. You're going to find other people that have similar ideas. You're going to find some people that have ideas that you can't stand, but you're going to find people. And for people that are isolating themselves, that's a very important part of getting out of that hole.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pig's Barbecue, serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet, and by Lexington Guns and Shooting Range, veteran owned and operated, and by Franklin Equipment, rent, buy, rely, and Atkins Law Firm Workers' Comp Attorneys. Who you hire matters.